Welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast, disrupting fishing entertainment as you know it. Prepare to laugh. Prepare to get to know fishing legends in a whole new and unfiltered way. And on occasion, you might even learn a thing or two about fishing. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
War. Yeah. What is it good for? You guys might have remembered that song from Edwin Starr. War, what is it good for? Well, turns out it might be good for church. Hey, everybody, Joe Simons, Like Diamonds, back again. Salt Strong Unchurched. Continuing on this theme of church. Obviously, this podcast is called Unchurched, and I want to unpack going back to the, 4 years ago now, I guess. Yeah, 4 years ago when first started Unchurched. The reason I started it was kind of twofold. One, I just felt God calling me to use this platform to share His word, His love, His message, to share His Son Jesus with more people that weren't going to church. Two, I was struggling to find a home at a church. At the time, we had moved around quite a bit. You know, I met my wife in Georgia, then we moved to Texas, had our first child there, and, didn't know anyone, didn't really find a church there. I mean, my wife was going through residency, and she worked pretty much every single Sunday, every single weekend. I was always on call, and, I'm trying to raise a daughter basically by myself, and going into a physical building called a church was the last thing on my mind. I just couldn't do it. I mean, we were barely sleeping, just kind of barely surviving. If you've been through that, especially when both parents are working and you're in a new area with no family, no help, it was really, really bonkers. And then moved to Atlanta. Same deal, didn't have any, family help, had another child, and did finally find a really, really amazing church when we were in Atlanta and started getting into the repetition of going. That was right around the time I started Salt Strong, and then moved back down to Tampa, and we had another child, our third child, Jackson, around that time. And I feel like, at least for us personally, everyone's different, but for us, every time that we had a child and moved, it was around the same time. It's kind of like a reset. Like, you're trying to get your life together and managing multiple kids, and all three of our kids C-sections. And, we had a lot of complications with Jackson. We're in the NICU for 11 days, just kind of praying that he was going to survive. It kind of got a touch and go, as I've shared on a podcast before with him. And not to say this is wrong or right, it is. It's what we lived through. It was kind of a reset. And not to say we put church on the back burner, but we kind of did not put God on the back burner. I was, especially during that time with Jackson, I was talking to God more than I ever had before in my life. I hadn't prayed that hard ever, just to save my son and give him health and energy and strength. That was a wild, wild time. So all that being said, when we started Salt Strong, I felt called. I always kind of felt called to use the platform. We were teaching fishing, and I was like, why can't we also be fishers of men like Jesus was in the Bible? And that C12 group, that's that Christian kind of a leadership group I'm a part of, they highly encourage me, like, well, hey, if you're feeling it, you go for it. God is not going to penalize you for talking about Him. As long as you're doing it with grace and truth, he is not going to penalize you or let you fail. And that ended up being very, very true. And then the other part is I felt like the traditional church model, the one that's very focused on the rituals and all that, is kind of broken. And that can be debated. There are certainly some churches that are still thriving, but in general, as a society, it is very obvious that model is broken. And you could tell that by just the lack of people that are going to church. I mean, you have, 30, 40 years ago, the majority of people went to church. Sunday was a sacred day. If you were Christian, you were proud of it. You weren't getting hated on because you were the majority. Now it has flipped. I mean, if you spend any time on Facebook, If you spend any time on social media, if you spend any time in life just walking around or watching the news, I mean, Christians are not, I don't want to say uh, they're the minority, because that's not true yet. But it's not like it was. And certainly Sunday is not considered sacred. I mean, it's bonkers how many travel soccer games and birthday parties and things that we're associated with now is a Christian family that happen Sunday at 10 a.m. And there's no even thought about that being wrong, or hey, maybe we should do this, on a Sunday at 1:00, like it used to be in the old days. There's just been a lot of stuff that changed, and a lot of people that are turned their back on Christianity because they think it's fake or hypocrites or whatever it might be. On a podcast, I don't remember what episode it was 3 or 4 ago, I did mention church, and I'm not talking about the last one with Pete. He was amazing, and I love what he's doing with his kind of outdoor water and wilderness church there. I think that's really cool, because he's seeing the same thing as a true Episcopalian pastor, that the traditional church model, the one that is just focused on rituals and everything has to be perfect inside of a building, and it has to happen at this specific time and in this place, and you can't have any distractions. He's seeing that model himself is being broken, and that the church has hurt people, and people want to experience God. They're craving for it. That's kind of the theme of this podcast that I'll get into in just a second. Yet they're intimidated, or like I said, have been hurt, or have bad memories of the past, or don't really care about all the rituals. They want to have a relationship with God, a relationship with Jesus, and that is the point. And so, in my podcast a few podcasts ago, where I mentioned that it's not about church, and then I got some feedback for this, and I understand why, and I always love the feedback. I am certainly far from being perfect. I am a sinner. I am flawed. I am not going to get it perfect every time, and I love the feedback. And I do believe, though, that going to church is not the answer. Having a relationship with God and a relationship with Jesus is the answer. And so if you're going to church just to check it off the box, that was my point. I don't think it's not a bad thing. It's certainly better than worshiping Satan and and not going to church. But if you're just doing it to go, and you're not even hearing the message, and you're not having an intentional talk or a walk with God, it's not really that useful. And that's the whole point of church, is to go have an intentional relationship with God and with Jesus, and to learn to be around others. And I that part, once again, I'm still not going to say I'm 100% right, but I mean, that everything I've read, and I've read the Bible many times now, with that once a year Bible, I kind of stick to my guns on that one. And in the Bible, I've searched for it many times. I mean, the word church, the word church is not really used, depending on what version. Some versions of the Bible have used the word church, but in all cases, that the word church, or the meaning of the word church, ecclesia, is more of an assembly. It's a community. It's people coming together to spread the gospel, to spread the great word about Jesus. It is not a physical building, ever. And so, I mean, that's the point I was trying to get across is, if we think that our relationship with God has to happen in a physical building, we've missed the whole point. And that's what I was trying to say. And so back to the theme of this. So spring break, we did a Saturday to Saturday. We went down to Boca Grande and had a great time. And so we got home, Saturday evening, and the next morning, our friends had invited us to go to their church, and we had one of their kids that had ended up spending the night. So yeah, we'll head over to their church. And I'm thinking, man, spring break, for essentially the whole town of Winter Haven was on spring break. There's going to be nobody here. It was the opposite. It was the most packed I had ever seen that church. And I've been to that church before. And I was like, whoa, what is going on? And this was right when if you remember, that was right in the kind of the heat of the war. That was really the first major week that there was some real stuff going on. We just, lost the first couple Americans in the war. I mean, it was now becoming real. And I was like, whoa, okay. So next week went to our church, and same thing, packed out more than I'd ever seen it. I got there on time, meaning a few minutes early. I could barely even find a seat, and this thing holds like 1,000 people. It's rare that like the upper deck is packed. I was like, what is going on here? And it's continued to happen. And of course, we had Easter in there as well, just here recently. And that was a packed out service, and they did 8 services at our church. 8. I mean, if it holds 1,000, I don't think everyone was packed out, but quite a few of them were oversold. And you actually had to get tickets. Like, it was that crazy of a deal at this church. You had to get a ticket, and they were free, obviously, but it was just to make sure you reserved a spot so that they didn't have 100 people showing up that had to be turned away. So anyhow, I mean, 8 services. Let's just say they got it 80% full. You're talking about 800 people, times 8 in a city of 50,000 tops. And you had 8,000, almost 8,000 people, go through this church during Easter weekend. That's bonkers, like in an amazing way. I mean, that is unreal, just even as a percentage when there's so many other churches. I mean, it's like, man, did the entire city of Winter Haven attend church on Easter? Maybe they did. And I came away from that is a very, very positive thing. Because as I started this conversation off, that I was kind of believing that, man, the traditional church and the brick and mortar building, certainly not dead, certainly not defeated, but just had some breaks. Meaning it was starting to show signs of breakage. But I don't know. Maybe it's the war is bringing people together. It's the fear, and so I really started thinking about that while I was in church. I was like, wow, I wonder if God somehow uses things like a war, a bad thing, just to bring people closer to Him. Whether it's in church, in a true brick and mortar physical building, or if it's just in a community, if it's going down to the river and doing the Water and Wilderness Church, as I explored that after my conversation with Pete last week. I mean, there is an entire huge community globally of churches that are happening just like that, outdoors in the wilderness, out by waters and streams and rivers and by the ocean. I was blown away with how people are finding God and having an intentional relationship with God and doing community together. And so that's really the point I wanted to make, because I did get some feedback, as I mentioned, from the one where I guess I went a little too hard against the traditional church. But I do believe in, I mean, let's look at the Bible where the answer should come from. It never says one time in the Bible that you need to go to a physical brick and mortar building with stained glass windows and these rituals to be in church or to have a relationship with God. There is nothing wrong if that's how you do it. That's amazing. If that's the way you do it and that's how you feel close to God, that's how you have intentional conversations and relationships with God and relationships with other Christians and doing life together. That's amazing. I am all for it. Let's 10x that. I love it. But I also believe there are things like Unchurched and the Water and Wilderness Church. There are other, or just you being alone outside on a kayak or on a boat talking with God, or you could be in the hospital like I was, looking over a loved one, like I was with my son Jackson, praying like never before, having conversations with God. I was so far removed from a brick and mortar church, but man, I was having some church in that hospital building. I can tell you that. I had never prayed so hard in my entire life. And so that was the whole point. I want people who listen to this, with all my flaws and all the things that I get wrong and the amount of times I've cried and broken down on this podcast, I want people to know that the point is to have an intentional relationship with God and with Jesus. And whatever that means to you is fine. If for you, the best place to do that is inside of a brick and mortar building called a church, awesome. If it's out on the water, or up in the air in an airplane or in your bathroom reading the Bible, awesome. That's all that matters, is that it's intentional. What I was trying to say in that podcast is I've seen people, and I even talked to someone recently. It was a mom that I know pretty well, and she was like, I'll be honest, like I haven't heard a single message because she had a couple young kids. I'm dealing with them. I'm having to take them in and out of church because they're misbehaving. I'm so distracted. I don't think I remember a single word. I'm gonna say I'm not judging, but I was like, well, like, why do you even go to church? It's like, well, I mean, it's just always told I was supposed to do that. And I was like, and I think that's true. It's certainly not a bad thing. Once again, it's way better than sitting at home worshiping the devil or just doing nothing. So it's certainly a step in the right direction. But I was like, well, are you having like other conversations with God? And she's like, not really. Just, life's just so busy. And so I was like, well, hey, my challenge to you is to find some time. And I'm once again, do not hear me saying I'm suggesting skip that woman to skip the church. I think it's great. And I know if my mom's listening to this, she's going to say, yeah, get those kids in church, just at least get them used to it and accustomed to it. I am not going to argue with that at all. It can only be a positive thing. But if that's all you do and that's all your relationship with God, especially as an adult, I think there's more. That's all I'm saying. I would encourage you to have more of a relationship. It can't just happen on a Sunday if you're distracted moving kids, or if there's a kid screaming behind you and you don't hear a single word of the message and you're not having any sort of other talk with God. I think you're missing the point. There's more. And that's why I wanted to create Unchurched, that, hey, stuff can happen outside of the church walls to get you one step closer to becoming the version that God wants you to be, that he created you to be. I believe that you can have conversations outside of Sunday. I believe you can have amazing conversations and hear from God and hear from Jesus on any day, at any time, at any place, not just inside of church. So I felt called to talk about that because I got quite a bit of feedback on that one episode that, there was some, I think just some old school people offended. Oh man, I can't believe you're talking bad about the church or saying that's not the best place to have conversations with God. I did say that I have heard the best sermons of my life inside of a church, a brick and mortar building. So step one, I have heard the best sermons of my life. However, I've had the best talks with God outside of a church, 100% of the time. My best talks and my I'll just say when my relationship really, really got tight and I felt God, it was always outside of a church wall. And that's me. I'm not saying that's going to happen to you, but that's been me personally. For me, as you guys have heard me talk about that, it's been outside. It's been the times where the deer have come by and the bald eagles. I mean, I've just felt some crazy stuff outside on the water at my in-laws' farmhouse up there in Georgia, just walking around, sitting sometimes at night underneath the stars, and just me just listening and praying. Like, that is some of the most powerful stuff I have ever experienced, like where I feel it in my body, get goosebumps, almost feel like there's angels or spirits around me, like good spirits, and nuts, like unexplainable stuff has happened when I've been outside. So if you want to feel more and you're not feeling it wherever you are, go outside, start talking to God. You'll be shocked at what can happen. I do believe, because Jesus does talk about getting together as a community. He did not mention inside of a brick and mortar building called a church with a steeple and stained glass windows. I think that's great if that's where you find it, but do find a group, do find a community, go to church. If this war is still happening, I'm recording this, I guess 8 days before you're going to hear this. As I'm recording it, the war is still going and we're in day 40 something. I don't know if it'll be still going on or not, but if the war is encouraging you to go to a church, go to check out a church, see what it does for you, see if you can find some great people, hear a great sermon. I highly encourage you to go find a church, especially ones that, put the Bible first and are talking real talk, not just a rock show and telling you what you want to hear. So love you guys. Thank you again for all of the feedback, all the support. I'll take it. I will take it with a smile is as well. I really, really do love the feedback. Just be nice is all I can ask. Just like I always try to be back to anyone that I give any sort of criticism to. So my private email, joe@saltstrong.com, joe@saltstrong.com. I'd love to hear any and all feedback. The point of this message, war can maybe bring people to church, but two, and the biggest one, is be intentional with your relationship with God and Jesus. That is the point of this podcast. That was the kind of as a stepping stone to bring people who are unchurched, that aren't going into a brick and mortar building. That was why I intentionally used the name Unchurched, that wanted to be closer to God, that wanted to have a relationship with God, a relationship with Jesus, and maybe didn't know where to start, had been burned by a church, don't like going to church for whatever reason. This was supposed to be that stepping stone to give you maybe that one little message, that impetus to say, I want to take another step to go into a real church, or to find a group like Pete's there that's doing stuff outside by the water. Or, I mean, there's some people that are doing church fishing. They're just going out in boats and bringing a Bible and talking about it. There's a million different ways that you can do church, if you will, with a community of people. And I would highly encourage you to find the one that makes sense for you. Once again, love you guys, and I'll talk to you on the next episode.
'Cause fishing, it's in my soul.